Welcome to the network of Networth video podcast, having high-level conversations with high-level individuals. I'll be your host, Christopher Day. Enjoy the show. Hey out there, YouTube land. Today we'll be speaking about the exciting world of dirt with Doug Palmer of HBA Construction in Canyon Lake, Texas. All right, welcome Douglas Palmer to the show. Now, I've got to tell the audience out there exactly how I met Doug. Now, Doug is a member of a local networking, a business networking group that I'm a part of. And just last week, he was the keynote speaker at our organization. He spoke for almost 2 hours on the glorious, exciting subject of dirt. Strategic pause.
I did.
Yes, he did. Okay. So now here's the thing, folks. For almost that entire 2 hours, it was an intriguing presentation. And when someone can keep you captivated and keep you interested in the subject matter when it's dirt, right? I figured we had to have him on the show. He had to talk about what it is that he does. And I have since meeting him in person, I've gone to his websites, looked at his various things that he's got going on. And I'm going to let him tell you exactly what he's doing right now and how you can possibly work with Doug. Doug, can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing, what your current business endeavors are?
So my wife and I run a business called Home Builder Assist. We help people build their own homes. And then I am currently a contractor. I grew up in the trades from the time I was a little kid, learned how to run heavy equipment, fulfilled all my dreams in the equipment world. And it was actually quite an exciting time. One of the benefits for me as a young man is I not only got to work on residential, but I got to work on what we call heavy civil. And heavy civil is anything that's government type contracts.
I see.
And so the world of dirt for me, as a little kid, I got to watch the process of building roads and whatnot and seeing how the process went. But the part that was interesting to me was they did these things called compaction tests. And of course, when I first got there, I didn't know what a compaction test was. And then I got to see that transition from the time they did manual compaction tests, dig a hole, fill it full of sand, do the weigh the dirt to see how dense it was, to using nuclear gauges. And that transition actually took years. They slowly moved away from the mechanical means and went into the nuclear gauges, which they were slow to change because they just wanted to verify everything was good. So every time they did a nuclear gauge, they did a test right beside it to verify that that nuclear gauge was actually functioning the way they thought that it should. So that kind of led me down the road of dirt.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to know, can you tell me the purpose of doing those tests? I understand what you do in dirt work, but can you tell me the actual purpose of doing that test?
So you can imagine if you were to bring a dump truck of dirt to your site and dump it on the ground, it dumps out at about 80% compaction, maybe a little less, probably not ever more. And so if I was going to just bring a bunch of dump trucks and dump and smooth that out and grade it out and build a house on it, I would have a huge problem. A house, a sidewalk, a road, whatever, because you would have differentiation of settling from one area to the other based on the thickness and how much compaction you have in each little location. Okay. And so they do a compaction test pretty often.
Building.
Yeah. So they test the soil to make sure that you have the same compaction and that it's compacted enough that you won't have settling of the materials.
Okay.
So that's in a nutshell.
I just wanted to make sure in clarity that I had that, understood that's what the purpose is to ensure that that base is completely solid so that when you build on top of it, there's no shifting, right? And so just dumping out
Absolutely.
of a dump truck and spreading it around, that doesn't necessarily do the job like a lot of us would assume it does. I mean, average John Q homeowner doesn't know that there needs to be testing on the compaction level of the soil that's been brought out on their own property. They just assume, oh, it's ground, good Lord, put it there. It's fine to put a house on. And, as an expert, you're telling us, no, that's not true. So, okay, okay. Thank you for that information. So, what is it that you do now?
Well, now I own a tractor and a backhoe and a dump truck, and I do grading, excavation, rock breaking, just whatever. I also do some concrete work and
Heavy equipment
everything in the dirt.
operations.
Sure.
Now, do you
Uh,
primarily do business in the Canyon Lake Hill Country area where I know you're based out of, or do you do the whole San Antonio greater surrounding area? I mean, what's your kind of your scope and field? Like, who is your ideal people to work with if you just only had to go so far?
well, I'd like to stay in Canyon Lake, but that hasn't been practical for me, so I've had to drive around to different areas.
That's a question. How long have you been in the Canyon Lake area, Doug?
So my wife and I moved here about 7 years ago, something like that.
Okay,
But it's a really big but. We were living in Washington State. I actually had moved to California to work for CAD as an operator trainer, and then we moved here. I came and visited her here. She visited me in California. I visited her in Washington. We just had this loop going on for
sure.
quite a while. But now I've been here permanently for about 2 years.
Okay, okay. And you were in the Canyon Lake area the whole time?
Yeah.
Okay. Now the reason I ask, I was there for, the better part of a decade. And that's what I was doing was home building, back at that time. That was in the early 2000s. And I was just curious. At that time, it was a boom. There was such a surge of growth in that area. I mean, that's when all of your major little developments were put in. I know I was
And
part of them. And I know that it slowed during the recession, everything kind of. Now, for me, my work didn't stop through the recession because and I was there during that time because
yeah,
of the fact that we had contracts that were 2 years out. So
yeah.
we actually floated along in the construction zone, but there were many, many, many companies that did not and just ended up going under. I mean, all of that's real estate related, all of it's bank and debt related. So, if it wasn't able to be funded or if funding got pulled because of what have you, everybody was left high and dry, contract or not. We were fortunate, but I was just wondering, are you still experiencing the same level of growth in your area?
So there is quite a bit of growth that's started to come around here recently. There's a new development that's being excavated right now by a large contractor, big D9 dozers and scrapers and whatnot, and these giant rock milling machines, and they're flattening out the land. And I don't know how many homes, but it's going to be a lot of homes.
Sure, sure, sure.
So, and then of course, there's other stuff going on around the area as well. So, yeah, there's quite a bit of work around here.
Now, in all of your years of being a heavy equipment operator in business zone, well, first let's talk about the operations because I know that's boots on the ground. You're getting dirty. Uh, can you tell me one or two of your most memorable moments, whether they be haphazard, whether they be a job well done, whether they be somebody getting something cut off, whatever it is that you've got? I know that in the time that you've been, perfecting your craft, that you have witnessed and been a part of some amazing stories, and I'd love to hear one or two.
Well, one that just happened real recently, and it was, it's always nice to hear, but I got a call from a gentleman in a housing development, and he was on a well, and his well went dry, so he was having to truck water to his house weekly. Now you can imagine what that must be like. But he decided he was going to go ahead and bite the bullet and hook into the public water system. So he called me up and said, "Hey, I got your name from another gentleman, and he says you're the best contractor that worked on his project." You love to hear stuff like that. But
Sure.
so anyways, what I did for him is I excavated the trench. I didn't cut any corners where we hit rock. We got the rock breaker out, broke the rock out, dug it down deep enough so we're not going to have freezing problems.
Sure.
We brought in sand to backfill the water system so that the rock wasn't going to impact that when we're backfilling, and did a great job. And anyways, we he had a great experience. I had a great experience. It's great.
That's not okay. Now I know that when we spoke earlier, you mentioned a few other endeavors as well that are kind of coming up and things that you've got going on in the back end and different stages of life happening. And I think that's very important because the shift that we spoke about is, first of all, it's a big shift for any person to do, to go from being what you've been doing all of your life into this next little step. And I'm going to let you talk about it. But, I just think you'd be commended, first of all, for making that leap. Second of all, I think it's a very wise decision with time and physical energy, and to be able to actually provide real value to human beings who are readily bodily able and ready to go out there and start their world, doing what you've spent your life doing. I think that's an amazing thing. Would you like to tell the audience what it is that you've got in the works, or at least in the planning phases right now, as far as we're talking about? But would you like to share with that?
Well, sure. So it's kind of funny. One of my passions as a young man, being a superintendent, working on projects, is I got to do a lot of salmon rehabilitation. And because of that, I got to work around a lot of interesting people. I tore down the first dam in the United States. And if you can imagine, I had no clue, but they asked if we could have visitors. And I said, oh, sure, yeah, we can have visitors. The Department of Fisheries wanted to have people come out there. And so they started bringing a busload, two busloads actually, of people, and they're getting off the bus. And I'm like, whoa, 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 what's going on? And anyways, in a nutshell, we had lots of visitors because we tore down the first dam in the United States. There was a lot of interest in that. Well, for me, I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of these gentlemen from the Department of Fisheries. And so I've kind of had this passion for doing water type projects. And I know we didn't really talk much about that, but
I was going
um,
to ask, though. I looked.
so I, right. So, anyways, I like building ponds and waterfalls and that kind of stuff. Here's the interesting part of it, though. My take is a little different than a lot of the people that build those kind of facilities. They want to use plastic and all kinds of beads and all kinds of stuff to do the cleaning of the water. And me, because of working where I did and seeing what Mother Nature does and how Mother Nature does it, I've worked more towards doing a natural type system.
So you're interested in aquaponics, basically.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
Well, aquaponics becomes a part of it because the plant life will clean very well, clean the fish problems that are arise. You can do it with plastic parts. It works,
sure. No, I just
but
wasn't
Mother
sure, like, how
Nature
that
really
worked
well.
for you in a system like that. I know that I had a little homestead, thing years ago where I was working on for about a couple of years. I was working on a little permaculture system, and that was part of it, was a little aquaponic setup that fed some fish and some crawdads and some plants. And the whole idea is to turn the nitrates into nitrites, let everything harmonize and balance. And does it work the same way for you with what you're doing?
So just to let you know, and I know we didn't talk about this either, but I started by creating a gray water system at my shop. And so the gray water would go down into this biosystem, then it would go into the second biosystem, and then as it went through the second biosystem into the pond area, I put a whole bunch of goldfish out there. Are they going to survive or are they going to die? Right. Now,
Sure.
this is me experimenting, of course. And
Right.
I was fascinated how quickly the water was cleaned up by cycling the water back through the gravels and the sands
Sure.
and the woody material.
Okay.
And you
Interesting.
want to have woody material in there because again, that's biology, right?
You know what? Excuse me just a moment. Let me get this lady taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, she's in a kennel right now and she sees her boyfriend out the window. Give me just a moment to stop that. I don't have to stop anything. Just go. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Shoot, come on, mouse. This is good. Hey, come here, girl. Come on. Come on. Go outside. Go outside. Go outside. Go outside of mom. All right. There you are. All right. Now we're right back with you. Right back with
Well,
you.
the
Just
whole fun part
right
of that is it didn't
off.
take long to find those fish surviving the gray water. Typically, that's not what people want to do. They want to put plants at the end and then let it soak into the ground. But I wanted to actually make sure that it was viable to sustain.
Sure, life.
Um,
Sure.
yeah,
No, that's very interesting. And you were just experimenting with it, really, just getting it going. Now, I will
yeah.
say that I looked at your website, and that's HBK. Like, hang on, make sure I'm looking at HBA. Yeah, HBA Construction. Now, that is an awesome website. Looked at it, you did a great job putting that together, whoever did that. And the images were fantastic. If that is your work and you guys built that, all of them beautiful. Every single waterscape out there. Anybody would be, envious, if their neighbor got it in their backyard. I'll tell you that. For
There's
sure.
some magic about having more of a Mother Nature type of a fill. You know, in Mother Nature, for example, when I tore out that first dam, we tore out a mile, not quite a mile, but almost two-thirds of a mile of stream bed and did a lot of excavation and brought in materials based on the plans and the specs. It was pretty complicated, honestly. We had 32 fish ladders made of piles that went, between 20 and 80 feet in the ground. Well, 20, none of them were that shallow, between 40 and 80 feet in the ground. And then there were weirs built, and they were 1 foot waterfalls, just 1 foot each one. So not much of a drop. And the purpose of that system, replacing that dam, was to allow all breeds of salmon to migrate up that system
Okay.
over the course of 3/4 of a mile. So those weren't, bam, 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 like you see a fish ladder. These were more of an tried to emulate Mother Nature the best they could. I got to tell you, the guys who did the planning did an amazing job.
Sure.
Someday I'll have to pull a video out and just show you what that stream looks like today. It's something else.
Love that. Love all the thought that actually goes into creating a real ecosystem, and then to make it
Yeah.
a beauty feature, something that's in someone's, home that they're going to cherish forever, and it's a living, breathing piece of life. That's
Yeah.
amazing that you have your hand in that. When we first met, he was a dirt worker. That's all, just a dirt worker. And there's so much more to Douglas Palmer. And after we spoke, you don't realize at our meetings already 2.5 hours long, a lot of times, generally just uh, us business owners just networking, shooting the bull, and getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And I think you and I carried it on almost 5 hours last week. And I have to say, I enjoyed the entire conversation. I
Oh,
knew
yeah, me
there
too.
was definitely some things that we need to do together. Now, I'm not doing any development at the moment. However, the purpose of this particular video podcast is to start connecting business owners with investors, right? People who need to connect, and it's in our area. We're doing this so that the local business owners, the local developers, realtors, insurance people, contractors, laborers, whatever it is that you're doing in this area, if you're trying to do it with someone else, this should be a place to connect. If you're building something and you need funding and you're looking for that group should be looking somewhere for opportunities, right? Where are they looking for opportunities? Clicking on a Facebook ad? Come on. Really. Or they're scouring biz buy sell hoping for a good deal. That doesn't sound great either. But if they're able to be a part of a community that's local, right? People that sit down together, eat lunch together, breakfast together, what have you, and get to know each other, and then go back and watch videos where real human beings get to tell their story, get to talk about what they do, get to be excited about their actual passions in life. How many people get passionate about dirt? I don't know, but I saw one do it last week for almost 2 hours. and that was amazing. So, okay, now we also touched on another topic last week. Now, I don't know if you're ready to share that, but that was the educational component that you had spoken about. Were you ready to share with the public any of that yet, or is that still a plan in the
Sure.
works that you don't even want to mention?
Sure. No, years ago as a superintendent during the winter in Washington State, they had a program. Long story short, the union was trying to, and the government agencies were trying to kick contractors out that were non-union contractors from doing civil work.
I see.
And a group of contractors got together along with a company called CITC, which started an apprenticeship program in all phases of construction. And so they hired our company, myself as a teacher, to teach an apprenticeship program. And it was great. Honestly, some of the guys had been in the business for a while, but they just had to have numbers. And then some of the people were brand new.
Sure.
And anyways, I found that I actually had quite an interest in training. Um, One of the things that I did when I first moved here is I went down to my local high school and I got a couple of my nephews and a couple of older contractors and not contractors, but I went to a contractor and got a couple of his employees to come and sit through 12 of my classes.
I see.
And so the classes range from reading ISO symbols, which is the symbols on the dash. It doesn't say engine oil anymore. Now it's got this funny little symbol with a drop in it, and it's like that's engine oil. Okay, well, great. You need to know what those are because you can't really monitor your equipment properly without being able to read those symbols.
Sure.
Also, there's lots of push buttons on your machine. And if you don't know what the symbol means, what does the push button do? Um, just to give you an example, a guy bought a brand new machine. He ran it all day. He got off, or he turned off his machine. He pushed a bunch of buttons, went home, came back the next day, started his machine, and couldn't get it to work. He could get it to drive forward and backwards, but he couldn't get the hydraulics to work. And he had no idea why. He calls up the salesman and says, "Hey, you sold me this stupid machine and it doesn't work." "Well, what's going on?" "Well, the hydraulics don't work." "Oh, okay, we'll send a mechanic out." Mechanic went 3 hours round trip out to
Sure.
that site, sat in the machine, turned it on, looked up and said, "Oh, click, it's fixed." Now you can imagine not being able to read those symbols was catastrophic for that particular guy that
Sure.
day because he was pushing buttons he didn't know what they were,
Yeah,
and
probably ate five, six
himself
hours
out.
worth of labor. I mean, just
At $180 an hour, that was an expensive service call. Now, to be honest, it was Peterson Cat at the time, and Peterson Cat was pretty friendly, and they didn't charge him for that, but they could
sure.
have.
Yeah, but he had to eat his own labor. I mean, those people weren't sitting
Sure,
out there on location for free. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, no, he was down for hours.
that's right. That's right. Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
so,
So
anyways,
your
learning how to do
intention,
that kind of stuff.
so your intention is to open up a training course, in heavy equipment operations?
Eventually, I definitely want to do yes. I want to get with some of the bigger companies around here and kind of start an apprenticeship type program for young kids coming up, out of high school and train them up and then marry them off to different companies that would give them a try to see if they're going to survive in the big boys world. The big boys world is different than, home construction. It's a completely different animal.
Sure.
But
Okay.
yeah,
Now, on that
thank
one, since we're on that subject, I have to ask you because the people that should be watching this, really, it's targeted towards our local community. So,
you.
if are there any companies that you know of specifically, or types of company that you would like to reference and say these are the types of companies I want to work with, or that I want to sit down with? Well, you never know who watched the videos.
Sure. Well, I mean, for example, I've talked to Zachary Construction. I don't want to really drop a bunch of names, but
Sure.
that's since I've been here now in California. When I was working for CAT, I worked for everybody.
Sure.
I
Okay.
was
So
trained
you're
at
looking for
the
that caliber and size and scale of company is what I'm getting at. That's the type of company, type of work you're looking for.
yeah, not just Zachary's. I mean, Pinhalls. Different kind of companies that have guys who they would like to have well trained
Sure.
doing things like reading blueprints, like how to stake out a project, how to read the grade stakes that are on the ground. A lot of stuff is moving to computers and automated machine control. So, but not every piece of equipment has that on it.
Sure.
And so, the bigger guys, the bigger the company you work with, the more of that type of equipment that they'll have, that automated machine control. But teaching people how to run a machine so that they're safe. For example, um, I trained a landscape company. Now, they were a bigger landscape company, but they were just a landscape company.
Sure.
And so when they brought the guys to me to train, the first thing I did is had them, I talked to them about being finite with their controls. In other words, having dexterity, having real control of the machine. And so we did things like we would get a pail full of water and we'd have them reach out and swing and all kinds of stuff like that to get that dexterity down where they're not swinging
Sure.
stuff around dangerously. Well,
Well, okay.
in the world of the big boys, you have to be that kind of an operator. You can't be somebody who's a wrecking ball out there and
Certainly.
expect to work with a company like that.
Sure. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so that gives us a better idea of who you're looking to work with and work for. So right now, what we have on list and on video for Doug Palmer, you do heavy equipment operation work. So if somebody needed anything done when it comes to dirt work, heavy equipment, give you a call. I mean, you should be on their list. Number two, you're looking to do instructional training, looking to train up. Now, what size of group would you be looking for? A company that has like two guys or a company that has 20 guys that they'd send you at one time? What's best for you?
Well, my thought process really was to go to the high school type kids, the kids that are coming up, and give
Okay,
them an opportunity to get their fingers wet and get on the controls and feel what it's like to run a machine. And when I was a kid, these machines were brutal, and I say that laughingly because I used to look at what my dad ran and I used to feel sorry for him because it was old dinosaur stuff, cable rig dozers and whatnot, and road graders that I mean, just the control system was just compared today was archaic and hard, physically hard. Pulling handles. I mean, it was a long day when
right,
you spent a 12-hour day out running a dozer. You came home tired.
right, right,
Hey,
right.
there's some cabs and seats that are air cushioned, and I mean, it's a whole different world.
So,
So
does the new equipment still require the same level of training, or is it pretty well just hop in and run it?
yes, it actually requires, in some regards, more training to
Ah,
be a good operator.
okay, and you
Uh,
offer that as well on the new equipment as well.
sure. So the
Okay,
equipment today is faster and stronger. When I say faster, I mean from when I was a kid to today, a backhoe swings twice as fast. Twice as fast. That's fast. If you went back to my dad's time, it was half as fast as what I grew up with.
sure.
So a lot of the machines you have to well, I don't know how to say this. You don't have the same kind of feel. When you used to pull a handle on an old machine, you were pulling a handle that was linked to a valve.
Okay,
And you could feel that valve go up and down. And that now you're pulling a handle that's electrically controlling that valve. So
okay.
it's a deal.
Yeah, you
But
don't
don't
feel it; it just does it.
you do feel it when you get the touch. You do feel it.
Okay,
So it's a different kind of a feeling than it was early on. But along with that, there's a lot of benefits to equipment that didn't used to exist. And for example, I remember as a kid, you drive down a road, and let's say it's not a paved road, it's a dirt road, and you're bouncing, and when you get that thing bouncing, if you had a load of dirt in there, boom, and that dirt would fall out of it. Well,
sure.
now you have a thing called ride control, and instead of it bouncing, it it floats.
Oh, it stabilizes, huh? Oh, wow.
It stabilizes the front bucket.
How neat. How
What
neat.
that does for you is it allows you to drive at the same speed and lose no dirt, none on any of those bounces you hit. The bucket does this a little bit, and the tractor. I mean, the tractor does this too, but they're doing them separately. So
Sure.
it's boom, because that's what it was doing. It was bam, and it
Right,
was throwing
right.
dirt right out of your bucket. And now it's now it's floating. So it's a completely different feel. You need
Wow.
to learn to turn those things on and off and why to turn those things on and off. You don't want them on in every situation, but when you want them on, you want them on, and you need to know how to turn them on. So a little
Sure.
bit more sophistication there. Machines are a lot more powerful than they used to be. Like I said, they're a lot faster than they used to be as well. And so it takes some good skill. You got automated machine control, and you might think, well, with automated machine control, I don't need to know anything. Well, that's not true. You need to know how to manage the
Sure.
dirt. How do you manage the dirt, and why do you do it the way that you do it? So, learning those processes can be very helpful.
I see. Man, I love it. It sounds like you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to operating all this stuff. You've got years and years and years of experience. And I love to see that you're actually ready to put that in an educational space and pass that to the next generation coming up, all the way down to teenage kids. That's great. Um, as far as jobs, right? Like if you went to go and do a contract for another company, what would be your ideal type of thing right now? Are you trying to do waterscapes? Are you doing hardscapes? Are you doing road construction? What's your favorite or top two? Top two. If two different people came to you, what would be the ideal jobs?
Well, I like doing dirt work. I like grading. I like making sure that when somebody builds a home, he's not going to have water running into his house. I can't tell you how much I see problems generated by contractors that just don't follow the ABCs of grading.
Sure,
Um, I am unwilling to cut corners, so I'm not necessarily financially as competitive as some people are.
sure.
I'm doing a job. I'm out there. We're hauling in the dirt. We're putting water in the dirt. You need to have water in the dirt to get compaction. You can't get it without water. It's the lubricant that allows the particles to get closer together. Too much water, not good. Too little, not good. So we're out there doing all of that and doing that grading. And of course, I spend 3 times longer than the guy right down the road. And he pulls out and he dumps his dirt out on the sod. Might I add, he dumps it on the dirt. I mean, he dumps the dirt on the grass and he spreads it out, and then he pulls these forms out and he's building his house on a disaster.
Yeah, totally different type of foundation. And that's where your compaction tests and everything else make a big difference to average Joe out there doing it. So what you're telling me is really your clientele is a high-end clientele. I mean, you've got somebody that the people that hire you or you want to work with are people that understand the value in what you're providing. They understand that the structural integrity of their foundation, right? Which is supposed to be the base of everything. They actually understand the value of what you do, and they don't want to cut corners either. That's who you're looking to do work with.
Yeah. And, part of the other part of that is knowing when there's a problem and bringing it up. Oops, what did I do? There you are.
Still here
Uh,
with me?
Bringing problems up to a client. We were doing a foundation. We were trying to get compaction in an area, and it was like, oh, there's something going on here. And it was just a flat lot. There was nothing particularly difficult about this situation, and we became really aware quickly that there was a serious problem. We ended up excavating down about 12 feet deep and bringing in material and bringing that back up in thin lifts and recompacting it. Well, you can imagine, if you're somebody who doesn't care and you're just gonna, oh, it'll be okay, well, great. Unfortunately, the guy who's living in that house 10 years later may not appreciate you so much.
Wow, 12 feet down.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow,
Well,
that's
I
a
was,
lot of material bringing it back in. So what was the issue there? Just the type of soil, or just there was no bedrock for 1,000 miles? I mean, what happened there?
Liquefied soil, just liquefied soil. It was problematic. It pumped really, really bad.
I see.
And so we took all that soil out. We brought different soil back in that had structural integrity and compacted that back in the same space. We had to go down to where it was good solid material.
Sure, sure. No, that makes sense to me. I didn't know as much about dirt until I started farming and watching how animals move it around.
Sure.
People that, we have a small pig farm, and one of the things that people always talk about is, pigs in mud and pigs being, wallowing in the mud and whatever. And they do to an extent, and really that's just because they don't have sweat glands, or they don't sweat, so they need to cool themselves off. So they like to be in a nice muddy pool. That's all that's for. Now, they don't do it all the time. They do it when they're really hot. That's about it. They really don't like to be all muddy and gross all the time. Now, one thing that I've learned, and I've learned it about other animals too, is when it's raining, a lot of them will stand up and won't lay down. And I think a lot of that, they're hoofed animals. It's hard to get up and down. They may break a leg, whatever. So it's easier to just stand through the muck. Now, what pigs will do is try to move that mud out of the way. They're smart enough to know that if they root, a foot or two down, there's going to be dry mud or dry land there. And that's where they'll make their little wallow and get down in. Problem is, if you got some small ones, there'll be a drowned one the next morning because it filled up with water. Yeah, because they made a
Right.
bowl. Yeah, but that's what they do is they move the mud out of the way from where they're at until they get to that next layer of dry. It took me a while to figure that out. I thought they were just rooting up around the fence line and tearing up my fence. No, it's when it got muddy, they were trying to get to dry area. So that's what they would do is they would scoot
Interesting.
that mud out of the way. Well, it ends up making a gigantic pile, shorting out the electric fence, putting pressure onto the real fence, and next thing you know, you got little piggies running everywhere. Yeah. So tell me a funny story, something on the job. I know there's some story that has just been funny in all of your years of doing this. I need to know what it is, and so do the viewers out there.
Oh gosh, I there's so many I can't even think, but I'll just tell you a story about meeting my wife. I met her, I don't know, 12 days later we were pretty serious, and 3 months later we were married. And
Ooh,
her dad worked at Mobil Oil for, I don't know, his entire career from the time, into World War II till he retired. And
sure.
so I was working for a contractor, and I loved my job. I was working with a guy named Gene Kilmer. It's actually Val Kilmer's the actor, his dad. And
Cool.
I was working for him for a while, and loved the guy. He was great. The whole family was really cool. But so I decided that I was going to quit my job and buy a backhoe. And I told my wife that. Now, we've been married 2 months, and she just about had a coronary. In fact, I thought maybe she was going to leave me over it. She was really, really, really mad. I mean, I'm
Sure.
not. And so, we had a lot of discussions and arguments. And of the day, part of the other part of that is, I was working in the union in California, and I was told by my friends, oh yeah, it's starting a job, that, starting to work for yourself, that's great, but you got to have $30,000 cash in the bank, and you can't do it, you don't get paid for 90 days. And they're giving me all this advice, and I'm listening to it. My eyes are getting big, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got $500 in the bank, and the only thing I own is my pickup and my my old
Tobacco.
dirt bike.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right.
oh yeah, I didn't own anything yet.
Ooh,
So I owned a dirt bike, and I thought, well, I could sell my dirt bike and raise some money, and that made me about $1,200. That's a long ways from 30,000.
sure is.
So you can imagine how, listening to my friends, how intimidating that was, to think, well, how in the world can I do this? I mean, their advice sounded reasonable.
Sure.
So, but I bit the bullet. I went out and I bought a backhoe, and the payments were huge for 6 months, and then they got smaller. But um, I did it, and it was a little scary. But here's the deal: good intentions of friends sometimes might intimidate you to do something that you think that you're afraid to do. And all I can say is just do it. Um, why was I able to do it? Well, knowing that I wasn't going to get paid for 3 months, that was problematic. I didn't have any cash flow. So when I talked to people, I said, hey, listen, I'm brand new in this business and I want to do this and I want to serve you well, but I can't wait 3 months for my money. I mean, here's the deal. I got a backhoe payment. I got to make it in 2 weeks from now.
Sure.
I need to get paid much sooner. And, isn't it funny? People stepped up to the plate and helped us out.
Yeah.
And so we made it through. Was
Well,
it a struggle? Yeah, of course it was. But was it worth it? Yeah, I think it was.
that's what I was going to ask you is about your entrepreneurial journey. So many people are so fearful of taking the leap, jumping out of that regular scheduled income that they know that paycheck's coming. They know they're going to get those same 40 hours plus whatever, and they've got great benefits and all that, but they have a dream, or an idea or a hope or a thought, whatever it is that they've got that inkling inside them that makes them want to step out of the normal box, and so many people are just scared to do it. So now, would you say that because you were indebted, like you had payments coming up, that it pushed you and drove you to go make the calls and knock on the doors and get the contracts?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that had happened while I was working with Gene is I met a lot of really good people. And, I didn't work for myself or for them directly, but because of that scenario, I had some pretty good contacts
Great.
and, and, I was smart enough to benefit from those contractors really well.
That's right.
Uh, Everybody's going to have a different situation.
Sure.
Like for example, if you can if you can think that you're gonna do something big, don't just drop off the ladder and then say, oh, I'm gonna go find some work. Nah, bad idea. I lined up a pretty good sized contract before I jumped off that ladder. Now it took me a while to line it up. I think I probably worked 3 months on putting that whole thing together.
Sure.
And, while I was working my day job running heavy equipment, and at the end of the day, that first jump off was enough to help us for about 3 months, which is a pretty big
Sure.
deal to start
Yeah.
off with.
That's right. Oh man, well,
Very,
congratulations on that. On anybody that has stepped from one realm to the next. It's one thing when you're born into being self-employed or a business owner or what have you. When you've gone through being the W-2 worker, put your time in, learned how to do it from the lowest level up to the level where you're actually instructing other humans, and you've been taught all the SOPs from everyone else, all of the other major companies. You've got years and years of their operational procedures in your brain. And now here you are with that experience and able to say, I know what does work, what doesn't work, what was BS and what's not. And I can train someone who's never done this, doesn't know anything about it, exactly how to move through the motions. That's a pretty cool feat, if I do say so myself. I appreciate you being on today's episode. Now, I will ask you, are there any other just fun stories that you'd like to share before we wrap this one up? I think I've had you on here close to about an hour. So for a first time, that's pretty good. Which, by the way, I would love to follow up with you later on to let the rest of our community know what's happening in the changes in your endeavors. You've got multiple things going on. You're looking for some contracts. You're about to, do some things with training and moving in that realm. I'd love to see how that transpires and, what you do with it. But anyway, now, do you happen to have any stories?
okay, I'm going to tell you my favorite story growing up. So I started running equipment when I was 14 years old. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was a pretty good operator. I'm not going to say I was the best, but I was pretty dang good. I was very competitive. So a kid from my that I grew up with in high school, I didn't know Fred very well, but Fred came to work for us, and So Fred couldn't run his, a machine to save his life. I mean, he was getting stuck all the time and just, lots of problems. And one day Fred comes up to me and he says, "Oh, I finally figured it out." I says, "What?" "How do you know when you're good? How do you know when you're good, Fred? When you're as good as I am." And laughing, just laughing. And so, but slowly he was getting better. And one day we're out and we're doing some grading, and I had dug and excavated a trench for water line, and we put the water line in, and Fred was out there backfilling it with the dozer, and he went too far over, and one track went into the ditch.
Uh-oh.
And uh, Fred comes up to me and says, "Doc, Doc, 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 you got to help me. I lost the dozer. It's in the ditch." And I'm like, "Okay, okay." So I walk around the corner, and there the dozer is. And I'm like, "Drive it out." And he said, "No, no, 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 it'll tip over. You can't drive it out." So I got on the machine and I drove it out. And he's like, "Dang."
I always
So
wondered how you did that. I've seen, videos where they fall in or they're in a bind. And I'm like, how did they get them out? And what picks up that?
every scenario is different, but in this case, it was just humorous
Uh,
to me because it was easy. So the next time he's backing up a machine, he's got a big manhole on the front of a track loader, and he's backing up, and he gets stuck and he can't go up anymore. And so, anyways, they got on the machine and I showed him how to back it up and get past the little bump in the road. And then again, Fred was very competitive, like me. Oh, it made him mad every time. He's like, "Oh." So then he's actually getting to be a pretty decent operator, but he's still green. And he gets a backhoe stuck, and he goes, "Doug, you got to go get the D9 and pull me out. I am stuck." He says, "Fred, you can't get a backhoe stuck that I can't get out." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll make you lunch for a week." So I go out there, I get on the backhoe, and I go sideways, and I go, and up, oh, there it is, combination. Pull the outrigger out, pull the outrigger out, and boom, I'm out. And it took me all of maybe 45 seconds. And
Expert operator.
you can't imagine how pissed he was. But at the same time, he paid attention.
Sure.
So Fred talked me into buying a motorcycle. Now this is kind of a long story, but he talked me into buying a motorcycle, and oh my gosh, it was an off-road dirt bike, and I liked them. I could kind of putz around on them, but I was a putzer. Listen,
Sure.
I didn't know how to ride a dirt bike, but Fred was crazy on a dirt bike. So I go out riding with him, on weekends, and I'm telling you, this guy on a dirt bike was, he was motocross king as far as I was concerned.
Sure.
So I got a real respect for how talented he was. Then we're running a job, and Fred, I told you he's competitive. Well, he's always trying to keep up with me and outdo me. And so we're each driving a dump truck. We're driving to the site. We're loading our dump truck and driving it off. So I would get to the site, clean up his mess, load my dump truck, get in it, and drive away. And he would come back and mess it up. And I mean, it was a mess. And we're trying to finish grade. So at the end of the day, Fred just comes up to me and he's shaking his head. "How the crap do you do that? I come over there and I'm digging as fast as I can, and I make a mess, and you come and you clean it up, and how are you doing all this stuff?" And I said, "Fred, when you're riding a motorcycle, seriously, when you're riding a motorcycle, is that a tire on the ground, or is that part of your body? Is that an extension of your body?" And he goes, "It's an extension of my body." I says, "Exactly." And it's like the light bulbs went on.
Sure.
And it was amazing to watch, just an overnight transition of a guy who was pulling levers and a guy who was operating a machine.
Right.
It's one of my favorite stories because it really is poignant and points to the difference between operators and people who pull levers.
Sure. 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 It's feeling
I
that rhythm, understanding the machine and being a part of it. It being a part of you.
yeah,
I get that. That makes sense to me.
yeah,
Not so much on a machinery level, but on other things that I've done, even with art. When the tool, the paintbrush, the spatula, the whatever it is that you're using becomes an extension of your hand. I understand that
yeah,
feeling, and that's a beautiful. It's art. That is when you know that you're a creator. you've mastered something. You've got that. So I commend you on that. Doug, I tell you, it has been a pleasure speaking to you. Would you like to address any the viewers out there with a final thought before we close this show out?
When it comes to dirt work, the one thing that I would say is educate yourself on the importance of compaction and what that entails. When contractors that don't do it right get a set of prints from an engineer, the engineer stamps it correctly. They need to follow through and do the work correctly. That means, compacting the soil in small lifts and doing, the due diligence to do the process right. We live in a place here in Canyon Lake where we have rocks. So the ground's pretty forgiving on contractors who don't do as good a work as they should. But there's other areas, especially on the east side of 35, where man, you better really make sure you have somebody who's really doing his project
Certainly.
properly.
So
I see
what
so
you're
many
telling
folks.
me is that if there's somebody out there that has a project anywhere in our area in the San Antonio, Hill Country, Spring Branch, or Canyon Lake area, and they're looking for some heavy equipment operating or training, they need to reach out to HBA Construction. Is that correct? And that's hbaconstruction.com. I will put a link down below. Now I have, what would be the best email address for them to reach you on?
So the best email is Dana, Dana, at askhba.com.
Excellent. All right. Dana at askhba.com. And I will also have that listed as well with a link in it so that somebody can do it. I just know that you have multiple addresses. I wasn't sure what you wanted the viewers to be able to click on to contact you. So that's one that you actually check and you look at. So now I've got his
Yeah.
card. You guys don't have it. I got his cell number, but you can't have it unless you call him and figure it out. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Doug. I appreciate your time. I know your time is valuable. I'm going to let you get off here and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.